What if I told you that in the next 10 minutes, everything you believe about human nature is going to be completely shattered? My name is Marcus, and I'm about to show you something that will make you question every interaction you've had with a stranger on the street. I'm standing here in downtown Seattle, and I can feel my heart pounding against my chest. In about 30 minutes, I'm going to become invisible, not literally, but in a way that's somehow worse. I'm going to transform into someone that society has trained itself not to see. Someone that makes people uncomfortable, someone they cross the street to avoid. You see, 3 months ago, something happened that changed my entire perspective on life. I was walking out of my favorite Starbucks in Bellevue, clutching my $5 latte, when I saw him. An older man, probably in his 60s, sitting against the brick wall with a cardboard sign. His eyes met mine for just a split second, and in that moment, I saw something that haunts me to this day. It wasn't desperation or anger or even sadness. It was resignation. Complete and total resignation to being invisible. I kept walking, just like everyone else, just like I'd been trained to do my entire life, but that look stayed with me. It followed me home, invaded my dreams, made me question everything I thought I knew about compassion and human connection. That's when I decided to conduct the most important experiment of my life. Not for views, not for content, but because I needed to understand something fundamental about who we are as people. I needed to know. When we strip away the designer clothes, the perfect teeth, the social media presence, do people still see us as human beings worthy of basic dignity? The transformation process took 3 hours. Professional makeup artists worked to age my skin, dirt my fingernails, and create the weathered look of someone who's been sleeping rough for months. They gave me clothes that smelled like they hadn't been washed in weeks, a torn backpack with holes in it, and shoes that were falling apart at the seams. But the most important part of this transformation wasn't physical. I had to learn how to disappear, how to make myself small, how to avoid eye contact in a way that wouldn't threaten anyone, but would still allow me to observe human behavior in its rawest form. My camera crew is positioned across the street, hidden in a van with tinted windows. They have no idea what they're about to witness. I have no idea what I'm about to discover. But I know that whatever happens in the next few hours is going to change me forever. As I look at myself in the mirror one last time, I barely recognize the person staring back at me. This isn't just about testing other people anymore. This is about testing myself. How long can I maintain this facade? How will it feel to be ignored, dismissed, treated like I don't exist? The location I've chosen is perfect for this experiment. Capitol Hill is Seattle's most progressive neighborhood, filled with young professionals who post about social justice on Instagram, who donate to homeless charities, who consider themselves enlightened and compassionate. If anyone is going to see past appearances and treat a homeless person with dignity, it should be these people. But I'm about to learn that what people post online and how they actually behave when faced with uncomfortable reality are two completely different things. I take one final deep breath, adjust my torn jacket, and step out onto the sidewalk. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I feel it. The weight of judgment, the burden of invisibility, the crushing loneliness of being surrounded by hundreds of people who refuse to acknowledge your existence. What happens next is going to shock you, because sometimes the people you least expect to show kindness are the ones who restore your faith in humanity. And sometimes the people who claim to care the most are the ones who reveal the ugliest truths about our society. This is my story. This is their story. This is our story. And it starts right now. The first step onto that sidewalk felt like crossing into another dimension. Within seconds, I understood something that no documentary, no news report, no social media post had ever taught me about what it means to be homeless in America. It's not just about lacking shelter or money. It's about becoming a ghost in your own city. I positioned myself near the entrance of Victrola Coffee, a trendy spot where Seattle's young professionals gather to discuss changing the world over $15 avocado toast. The irony wasn't lost on me. These were my people. Just yesterday, I would have been one of them, walking through that same door, completely oblivious to anyone sitting where I now sat. The first person to pass me was a woman in her 30s, designer yoga pants, clutching a green smoothie. She was talking loudly on her phone about organizing a charity gala for homeless youth. As she approached, I made gentle eye contact and quietly said, "Excuse me, miss." She didn't even break stride, didn't acknowledge I had spoken, didn't acknowledge I existed. She stepped around me like I was a piece of furniture, continuing her conversation about helping people exactly like the person she had just ignored. That's when it hit me. The crushing weight of invisibility. I had become a non-person in the span of 30 seconds. The next hour was a masterclass in human psychology. I watched as people's behavior changed the moment they spotted me. Some crossed the street entirely. Others suddenly became very interested in their phones. A few dropped coins into my empty coffee cup without making eye contact, treating the interaction like feeding a parking meter rather than acknowledging another human being. But what disturbed me most were the stares. Not the kind stares of people who wanted to help, but the clinical, judgmental stares of people trying to figure out my story so they could justify walking past. I could almost hear their internal monologues. He's probably on drugs. He probably chose this life. He probably wouldn't use money responsibly anyway. A businessman in an expensive suit stopped directly in front of me, pulled out his phone, and took a picture. Not to help, not to document a social issue, but like I was some kind of tourist attraction. When I looked up at him, confused and hurt, he had the audacity to ask if I minded being in his Instagram story about the homeless problem in Seattle. I was no longer a person with feelings, dignity, or privacy. I had become content. The psychological impact was immediate and overwhelming. After just 90 minutes, I felt my sense of self beginning to erode. When person after person treats you like you don't matter, you start to believe it. The shame wasn't about my appearance or my circumstances. The shame was about existing in a space where my existence made other people uncomfortable. Then something interesting started happening. A group of college students was approaching, and their energy was different. They were excited, animated, pointing in my direction. At first, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe these young people, this generation that claims to care about social justice, would be different. But as they got closer, I could hear fragments of their conversation. This is perfect. He looks authentic. This is going to get so many likes. My heart sank as I realized I was about to become part of someone else's performance. The leader of the group was a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog. Perfect hair, designer clothes that probably cost more than most people make in a month, and that confident swagger that comes from never having to worry about where your next meal is coming from. His name, I would later learn, was Brad, and he was about to teach me something ugly about the intersection of privilege and social media. As they surrounded me, phones already recording, I felt trapped. Not physically, but emotionally. I was about to become entertainment for people who saw my apparent desperation as an opportunity for viral content. The very people who should have understood the power of social media to either help or harm were about to use it as a weapon. But then I noticed her. Standing apart from the group, about 10 feet away, was a young woman with a backpack full of textbooks. She wasn't filming. She wasn't laughing. She was watching the scene unfold with a look of growing disgust and anger that told me everything I needed to know about her character. Her name was Emma, though I didn't know it yet. What I did know was that she was about to become the most important person in this entire experiment. Because while everyone else saw me as either invisible or entertainment, she saw me as something that had become increasingly rare in our society, a human being deserving of dignity and respect. What happened next would restore my faith in humanity, and teach me that sometimes the most powerful acts of kindness come from the most unexpected places. What happened next was so shocking that I almost broke character completely. Brad stepped forward with his phone held high, his friends forming a semicircle around me like I was some kind of street performer about to put on a show. The casual cruelty in his voice when he spoke made my blood run cold. "Yo, homeless dude," he called out, loud enough for everyone on the street to hear. "We're gonna make you famous, man. We're doing this thing for TikTok where we help out people like you, but first you gotta earn it. You know what I mean?" His friends giggled behind their phones, already recording what they clearly thought was going to be comedy gold. One of them, a girl with perfectly curled blonde hair, whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "This is going to be so funny. My followers are gonna love this." Brad pulled out a crisp $20 bill and waved it in front of me like I was a trained animal. "Here's the deal, buddy. You want this money? You gotta dance for us. Come on, give us some moves. Show us what you got." The humiliation was instant and overwhelming. In that moment, I understood something about poverty that I had never grasped before. It's not just about lacking resources. It's about how society strips away your dignity piece by piece until you're expected to be grateful for scraps of attention, even when that attention comes at the cost of your humanity. "Come on, don't be shy," another one of his friends called out. "Dance for the money. It's easy cash." I felt sick to my stomach. These weren't just entitled college kids being thoughtless. This was calculated exploitation. They wanted to capture my desperation on camera, to turn what they assumed was my rock bottom into their entertainment. They were treating me like a circus animal, expecting me to perform tricks for their amusement and their social media engagement. But what made it even worse was the crowd that was starting to gather. Other people were stopping to watch, some pulling out their own phones to record the spectacle. No one was intervening. No one was questioning whether this was right. They were all just consuming the show, treating my humiliation as free entertainment. "What's wrong with you people?" The voice cut through the laughter like a knife. It was sharp, angry, and absolutely fearless. I looked up to see the girl with the textbooks pushing through the crowd, her face flushed with rage. "This is a human being, not your entertainment," she continued, her voice shaking with emotion. "What is wrong with you?" Brad turned to face her, clearly annoyed that someone was interrupting his content creation. "Chill out, girl. We're helping him. He's gonna get $20 for like 30 seconds of dancing. That's a pretty good deal." "Helping him?" Emma's voice cracked with disbelief. "You're humiliating him for your stupid social media. This is disgusting." The confrontation that followed was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. Here was this young woman, probably barely out of her teens, standing up to a group of people who clearly had more money, more social status, and more followers than she did. She was risking their mockery, their potential retaliation, their ability to turn their cameras on her and make her the target of their cruelty. "You don't understand how this works," Brad said condescendingly. "This is called content creation. We're influencers. We help people and document it. It's inspiring." "Inspiring?" Emma shot back. "There's nothing inspiring about making someone dance for money while you film it. You're not helping anyone. You're exploiting someone you think is vulnerable for your own benefit." His friends started joining in, trying to pressure her to back down. They called her uptight, told her she didn't understand the culture, suggested she was jealous that she wasn't part of their group. But Emma stood her ground with a courage that took my breath away. "I understand the culture perfectly," she said, her voice steady now. "I understand that you think having followers gives you the right to treat people like props in your little show. But it doesn't." While this argument raged around me, Emma did something that completely shattered my heart in the most beautiful way possible. Without breaking eye contact with Brad, she sat down next to me on the cold concrete sidewalk. Not across from me, not standing over me, but right beside me, at my level. If you're watching this and you believe that real kindness doesn't need an audience, that true compassion happens when no one is watching, then I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what Emma did next didn't just restore my faith in humanity. It taught me what courage actually looks like. And I want to share more stories like this with people who understand that real change happens one act of kindness at a time. The $20 bill was still in Brad's hand, but suddenly it looked like what it really was. A tool of manipulation. A way to buy someone's dignity for the price of a meal. The moment Emma sat down beside me on that cold concrete, everything changed. Not just for me, but for everyone watching. The dynamic shifted so dramatically that even Brad seemed momentarily stunned into silence. Here was someone willing to literally lower herself to my level, to share in whatever discomfort or judgment that might bring. "I'm sorry about them," she said quietly. Her voice meant only for me. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Her words hit me like a physical blow, but not because they were harsh. Because they were the first words anyone had spoken to me in 3 hours that treated me like a human being capable of having feelings, of experiencing pain, of deserving basic respect. Brad recovered quickly from his surprise. "Oh, come on. Now you're just being dramatic. We're trying to help the guy, and you're making it weird." Emma turned to face him, and I saw something in her eyes that made me understand why she was different from everyone else who had passed me that day. It wasn't just anger. It was recognition. She saw something in this situation that the others couldn't see because she had lived it. "You want to help him?" Emma's voice was steady now, controlled. "Then help him. Give him the money without making him perform for it. Treat him like a person, not like a dancing monkey for your followers." "That's not how it works," one of Brad's friends chimed in. "People want to see something entertaining. They want to feel good about helping. Nobody's going to watch a video of us just handing someone money." "Then maybe," Emma said, standing up slowly, "you're doing this for the wrong reasons." The crowd that had gathered was getting restless. Some people were starting to walk away, clearly uncomfortable with how long this confrontation was lasting. Others were still filming, but the energy had shifted. What started as entertainment was becoming something more serious, more real, and that made people uncomfortable. Brad made one last attempt to regain control of the situation. "Look, you're being way too sensitive about this. He probably does this kind of thing all the time. Right, buddy?" He looked down at me expectantly, waiting for me to agree with him, to validate his behavior. The silence stretched between us. In that moment, I had a choice. I could play along, take the money, and let these kids have their content. Or I could maintain whatever dignity I had left, even if it meant walking away with nothing. But before I could respond, Emma did something that completely blindsided everyone, including me. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a brown paper bag. Her lunch. "Are you hungry?" she asked me, ignoring the cameras, ignoring the crowd, ignoring everything except the person sitting next to her. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She opened the bag and pulled out a sandwich, an apple, and a small bag of chips. Without ceremony, without fanfare, without asking for anything in return, she handed them to me. "It's just peanut butter and jelly," she said apologetically. "But it's all I have." The simplicity of the gesture was devastating. While Brad and his friends had been trying to turn my hunger into entertainment, Emma had simply fed me. No cameras focused on her face, no dramatic music, no hashtags or captions, just one human being taking care of another. Brad's group finally seemed to understand that their content wasn't going to work out the way they had planned. The girl with the blonde curls was the first to speak up. "This is boring. Let's go find someone else." "Yeah," Brad agreed, pocketing his $20 bill. "This guy's not fun anyway." As they walked away, still filming themselves and complaining about how their good deed had been ruined by someone who didn't understand social media, Emma stayed. She didn't follow them. She didn't try to explain herself or justify her actions. She just sat there with me while I ate her lunch. "I grew up poor," she said quietly, watching the group disappear down the street. "I know what it's like when people look through you like you're not there. I know what it's like when people think your circumstances define your worth." Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with personal experience and hard-earned wisdom. This wasn't theoretical for her. This wasn't an abstract concept about social justice or inequality. This was her life, her history, her understanding of what it meant to be invisible in a society that only values what it can see. "Everyone deserves dignity," she continued. "Everyone deserves to be treated like they matter, regardless of what they're going through." As I sat there eating her sandwich, watching this remarkable young woman who had just sacrificed her own meal to feed a stranger, I realized that I was witnessing something extraordinary. Not just kindness, but courage. The courage to stand up to a group of people who had more power than she did. The courage to sit on a dirty sidewalk when she could have kept walking. The courage to see a person where others saw a problem. But what happened next would test both of our courage in ways neither of us expected. For the next hour, Emma and I sat on that sidewalk and talked like old friends. She told me about her social work classes at the University of Washington, how she was working 2 part-time jobs to pay for school, how she dreamed of opening a community center for homeless youth someday. Her passion was infectious, her empathy genuine, and her understanding of systemic poverty was deeper than most politicians who claim to care about these issues. "The thing that breaks my heart," she said, watching people walk by us without a second glance, "is how we've trained ourselves to look away. Like if we don't see the problem, it doesn't exist. But these are people with stories, with dreams, with families who love them." What she didn't know was that with every word she spoke, I was falling apart inside. Here was someone who truly understood what I was pretending to experience. Someone who had lived through the shame, the invisibility, the daily humiliation of being poor in America. And I was lying to her. The weight of my deception was becoming unbearable. Every genuine moment we shared felt like a betrayal. Every story she told about her own struggles made my experiment feel more and more like exploitation. Was I any better than Brad and his friends? Was I just using her authentic pain for my own content? "You know what the worst part is?" Emma continued, her voice soft but fierce. "It's not the hunger or the cold or even the fear. It's the way people make you feel like you're less than human. Like your suffering is somehow your fault, like you deserve it." I had to tell her. The guilt was eating me alive, and she deserved to know the truth. But I was terrified. Would she feel betrayed? Would she think I was just another privileged person playing dress-up with other people's pain? Would she see me as no different from the influencers who had tried to exploit me for content? "Emma," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something." She turned to look at me, her eyes full of concern. "What is it? Are you okay?" The words stuck in my throat. How do you tell someone who has shown you such genuine kindness that everything about your interaction has been built on a lie? How do you explain that their compassion, their courage, their willingness to sacrifice for a stranger has all been captured on hidden cameras? "I'm not who you think I am," I finally managed to say. Emma's expression didn't change. She didn't pull away or look confused. She just waited, giving me space to find my words. This is an experiment, I continued, the words tumbling out now. I'm not actually homeless. I'm a content creator, and I've been testing how people treat those they perceive as less fortunate. There are cameras across the street. Everything that happened today has been recorded. I braced myself for her anger, her disgust, her sense of betrayal. I expected her to stand up and walk away, to call me out for being just another privileged person exploiting real suffering for views and engagement. Instead, Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing what I had told her. When she finally spoke, her response completely floored me. I know, she said simply. You know? I stared at her in shock. What do you mean you know? Emma smiled, not the bitter smile of someone who had been deceived, but the gentle smile of someone who understood something I was only beginning to grasp. I figured it out about 20 minutes ago, she explained. Your teeth are too good. Your hands are too soft. And the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, even dressed like this, you can't hide privilege completely. My mind was reeling. If you knew I was lying, why did you stay? Why did you give me your lunch? Why did you defend me? Emma's answer changed everything I thought I understood about this experiment, about human nature, about the difference between performing kindness and living it. Because it doesn't matter, she said. Whether you're actually homeless or just pretending to be, those people were still treating you like you were less than human. They were still trying to exploit what they thought was your desperation for their entertainment. And that's still wrong. She paused, looking out at the street where people continued to walk by, most of them still avoiding eye contact with us. Besides, she continued, maybe you needed to experience this. Maybe you needed to understand what it feels like to be invisible, to be judged, to have your dignity stripped away. Maybe that's the only way people like you can truly understand what people like me go through every day. Her words hit me like a physical blow. She was right. I had needed this experience. I had needed to feel the crushing weight of invisibility, the shame of being treated as less than human, the desperate gratitude that comes when someone shows you basic kindness. But more than that, I had needed to meet Emma. I had needed to witness what real courage looks like, what genuine compassion means, what it costs to stand up for others when you have nothing to gain and everything to lose. What happens now? I asked. Emma stood up, brushing off her jeans, and extended her hand to help me up. Now, she said, we figure out how to use this experience to actually help people. What Emma said next changed not just my perspective, but my entire life trajectory. As I stood there, still processing her incredible response to my revelation, she looked me directly in the eyes, with an intensity that made me understand I was about to receive one of the most important lessons of my life. You want to know what I think about your experiment? She asked, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I think it's exactly what people like you need to experience. Because now you know something that no amount of research or documentaries could have taught you. You know what it feels like to be erased. She was right, and the truth of it was almost overwhelming. In just a few hours, I had experienced a fraction of what millions of Americans live with every single day. The invisibility, the judgment, the casual cruelty of people who see poverty as entertainment rather than tragedy. But here's what I need you to understand, Emma continued. This can't just be content for you. This can't just be a video that gets views and then gets forgotten. If you're going to use this experience, if you're going to share what happened here today, then you have a responsibility to do something real with it. Over the next several weeks, Emma and I began working together in ways I never could have imagined. She introduced me to the real world of homelessness in Seattle, not the version that exists in news reports or charity campaigns, but the daily reality of people trying to survive in a city that has priced them out of existence. We started small. Emma knew a group of homeless teenagers who gathered under the I-5 overpass every night. Kids who had aged out of foster care, who had been kicked out by families who couldn't accept who they were, who had chosen the streets over abusive homes. These weren't the stereotypes that people like Brad and his friends imagined. These were honor students and artists and dreamers whose circumstances had nothing to do with their character or their potential. Meet Sarah, Emma said, introducing me to a 17-year-old girl with bright eyes and a quick smile. She's been accepted to 3 colleges, but she's been living in her car for 8 months because her parents kicked her out when she came out as gay. Sarah's story shattered every assumption I had ever made about homelessness. Here was someone with more intelligence, more determination, and more resilience than most people I knew. But society had failed her so completely that she was doing her homework by streetlight and showering at the YMCA. And this is Marcus, Emma continued, introducing me to a boy about my age who was sketching in a worn notebook. He's an incredible artist, but he's been on his own since he was 15 when his mom died, and there was no one else to take care of him. Marcus showed me his drawings, and they were breathtaking. Portraits of the other kids, scenes from life on the streets, images of hope and despair that captured the human experience in ways that would make professional artists jealous. But he had no way to share his talent with the world, no platform to showcase his work, no opportunity to turn his gift into a future. This is what real content looks like, Emma told me as we walked back to her apartment that night. These are the stories that matter. Not some staged confrontation with privileged college kids, but real people with real dreams who just need someone to see their potential instead of their circumstances. That's when I knew what I had to do. Emma and I launched a project we called Invisible Stories, using my platform and her connections to share the real experiences of homeless youth in Seattle. But we didn't just tell their stories. We created opportunities. We connected Sarah with scholarship programs that could help her get to college. We helped Marcus set up an online portfolio and connected him with local galleries interested in his work. The response was overwhelming. Not just views and likes, but real action. People started donating not just money, but time and skills and opportunities. Local businesses began offering jobs and internships. Colleges started reaching out with additional scholarship opportunities. Artists and mentors began volunteering their time. But the most important response came from other young people like Emma, people who had lived through poverty and homelessness themselves and wanted to help others navigate those same challenges. Our comments section became a resource center, a support network, a community of people who understood that real change happens when we stop treating poverty as entertainment and start treating it as a problem we can actually solve. You know what the difference is between what you did and what those other kids were trying to do? Emma asked me 6 months later as we sat in the community center we had helped establish. They wanted to use someone's pain to make themselves look good. You're using your privilege to make other people's lives actually better. The kids who had tried to exploit me for content never did post their video. Turns out, humiliating someone isn't as fun when someone calls you out on it and shows you what real compassion looks like. But Emma's kindness, her courage, her refusal to let cruelty go unchallenged, that's the content the world needs to see. If Emma's story moved you, if you believe that real change happens when we choose compassion over content, when we see people as human beings rather than entertainment, then I need you to be part of this mission. Subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments about a time when someone showed you unexpected kindness. Because together, we can create a world where people like Emma aren't the exception, they're the rule. This is just the beginning of our story, and I hope it's the beginning of yours too.